Hello my dear viewers. I have been discussing about the techniques by which we can teach or train a child towards achieving a desirable behavior. In some of my previous episodes, I discussed about the techniques by which we can reduce the occurrence of undesirable behavior in children, with special mention to children with special needs. And today in this episode I am going to discuss with you 3 techniques by which we can increase desirable behavior in children. No doubt I shall mention about children with special needs, but these techniques are equally important, equally effective and equally reliable while teaching desirable behavior or teaching some good activities, desirable activities to general children also. Now these techniques are called imitation, generalization and discrimination. Now I am going to discuss these 3 one by one. At first, let's come to imitation. Imitation, as the very word implies, stands for doing something by imitating others, doing something by copying or looking at others. How the other person is doing, I am following that way. I am imitating that particular person and I am doing the same way. This is called imitation. Now, we all know that children love to learn so many things by imitating. Like, we learn so many things from our parents by imitating them, by looking at them. And when we go to school, our school life starts, then also we learn so many things from our teachers by looking at our teachers, and also from our classmates, that is peers. Okay. Similarly, children with special needs, and with specific mention I would like to say children having intellectual disabilities also, they also learn to imitate and they also learn many things by imitating others. Okay, but one particular point we need to remember in this context is that a child with intellectual disability or a low level of intelligence fail to understand which point is to be imitated and learned and which not. Here there is a need of intervention by a special educator or a parent or a guardian or a caretaker. In this case, we may take help of a model. Like, in a classroom situation, if we know, definitely being a special educator or a teacher in a classroom, or being a parent or a guardian or a caretaker at home situation of the child, we definitely know so many things about the child, like whom the child imitates the most, whom the child likes the most, all these type of things. So in classroom, if we see that the child loves to imitate his peers, then we may make one of his peers as a model. We may ask one of his classmates that you be a model, I will teach something and he will follow you, he will imitate you and do the same activity. So, whom I will make the model will be totally dependent on the likes of the child, whom the child likes to follow. If the child likes to imitate the teacher, then the teacher himself or herself may act as a model, that the teacher will do some activity and the child will imitate and do the same after the teacher. And accordingly, now what will happen, that we all know that we need to reinforce the child for every correct step, every correct activity, every desirable behavior shown by the child or every correct activity done by the child. Now, when we take help of a model, then we reinforce that particular model also for every correct step, for every activity done correctly, done independently, or every desirable behavior shown by the particular model. And then the child will understand that reinforcement or encouragement will come to him or her also only after showing the desirable behavior. This is important and we need to keep it in our mind. Now, we can teach the same thing at home also. If the child is a only child of his or her parents, then any one of the parent or a caretaker or a guardian may play the role of a role model, and the child will imitate and do a particular activity. Other than that, if the child has a sibling, then that sibling can be made a role model, can be made a model, and that model the child will imitate, and the child will do all the activities after imitating that model. Okay, so this imitation technique is very effective, and we can use this technique at classroom situation also, at home situation of the child also. And by following this imitation technique, children learn things faster. That we need to know. Now the second technique is called generalization. Generalization means if I have learned something in a particular situation, for example in classroom situation or at home situation, after learning that particular good behavior, learning that activity, whether I am able to show that activity in appropriate situations correctly or not, that is called generalization. If I am able to do so, then I am able to generalize, and if not, then some deficit is there in my learning. For example, very easy example I am going to give, like the child was taught about the primary colors, okay, red, blue and yellow, for example. Then we taught the child by using for example flashcard, by using blocks and by using so many things. Okay, after learning it properly that this is red color, this is blue color, this is yellow color, in that particular classroom situation, by showing that flashcard, by identifying the correct flashcard, by identifying the correct color, correct block according to the color asked by me or the teacher. After doing that, we need to know if the child is able to identify the color of his or her dress, the dresses of the parents, the color of the curtains at home, for example I am saying. Okay, if the child is able to do so, that this is my red shirt, this is blue pen, the cap is blue, the color of the curtain is yellow, then we shall know that the child is able to generalize whatever is learnt. Okay, this is called generalization. Then third technique that I am going to discuss today in this episode is called discrimination. Discrimination again means showing already learned desirable behavior in appropriate situations and not in other situations. Not in some situations where it is not relevant, not necessary, not needed. Okay. For example, I have taught the child to wish good morning to the peers, to the classmates, just after entering the classroom, or to the teacher when the teacher enters the classroom in the morning time, that is for the first class, I think, for example, for the first class, for example. Now, if the child knows when to say good morning, and at home also the child is able to say good morning quite correctly during morning hours, then it is fine. And at the same time, if we notice that the child is not wishing good morning during afternoon hours, then we shall know that his discrimination knowledge is complete. That is, the child really knows when to wish good morning. And if we see just the opposite of it, like the child is wishing good morning at the afternoon hours also, in the evening hours also, then we shall know that this is not proper for the child, and he or she is not being able to discriminate between when to say good morning, when not to wish good morning. Okay, then what can we do? We can teach the child again. At the same time, we shall use some other techniques in order to reduce this behavior. Like, we ask the child not to say good morning during afternoon hours, during evening hours, but the child is not listening to us. Then we can use punishment technique, because showing a particular behavior undesirably or in inappropriate situations is never welcome. And while reducing a problem behavior in a child, punishment is also a good technique. Punishment here doesn't mean that you have to beat the child, or you have to assault the child physically, or you have to scold the child. It's not like that. In one of my previous episodes, I discussed it. This punishment technique I discussed thoroughly, and I hope you will be benefited by watching that particular episode, like how to use punishment technique, when to use punishment technique, when not to use punishment technique. Punishment technique never means that you have to hurt the child, you have to slap the child, you have to beat the child. It's nothing like that. Okay, it's nothing like that. So many categories of punishment techniques are there. All are detailed, all are discussed in detail thoroughly in that particular episode of mine, and I hope you will watch that episode and you will be benefited by that. Now, if we punish the child, if we use the punishment technique to the child when the child is not showing that good morning behavior, wishing good morning behavior properly, appropriately, then this undesirable behavior of wishing good morning at any time will be decreased. It will be decreased. At the same time, what else will we do? We shall reinforce the child when the child is wishing good morning to someone quite appropriately, quite correctly at proper time, that is during morning hours, as taught by us. Whenever the child does that properly, appropriately, correctly, please remember this, then we should reinforce the child. And when the child is not appropriate in showing that particular behavior, okay, then we shall use punishment technique. This again will make the child learn that wishing good morning at any time, whenever you want, is never appropriate. Okay, this is called discrimination. Okay, so these three techniques are also very, very effective towards teaching the child a desirable behavior. Okay, so this is all that I wanted to discuss with you in this particular episode, and I would like to request that please share this video with the ones who are in need of it. I mean the professionals in the field, the parents, the guardians, the caretakers who are in need of knowing these small tips, knowing these things in detail, because whatever examples I have put here are picked from my own experience of working with children. That is why I am saying. So thank you so much for watching this.